visiting us again in the ACC.
And Coach Narduzzi's already given him cherry juice.
Guys, what stands out about this Pitt team now that you've had a chance to watch them, up close and personal in practice?
Well, for me, and I was telling Coach, a lot of the show we were doing, our backs were to what was going on, but so we couldn't see everything, but I could hear everything. I could hear the coaches coaching, getting after them. I could hear the players have the enthusiasm. I could hear the crack of the pads.
Absolutely.
And it just brought back good memories for me, as a coach to hear and smell football. And Coach Narduzzi does it the right way here. And I think our practices were very similar in how we would structure them, and it's just fun to be around a bunch of guys that love the game.
I think the one thing that comes back to mind is the continuity of who they are as a program. Watching about the last hour and change yesterday, and then being around today's practice, the thing that it's funny when you get beyond people that follow the program closely, like you guys do, is everybody wants to know, well, they lost this number of starters on offense or some are starters on defense, and the reality of it is they have guys who are very capable of filling those positions. That only reaffirms here. You see David Green, you know what David Green's like. You see the young guys who are developing here in the program. So, look, I expect them to be involved in this. I think that, we all were easy to pick Clemson and Florida State in some order, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then the question was, who's going to be the third best team? They're clearly capable of being the third best team in this league. Maybe even one or two, depending on what happens around them, I think.
What gives you that confidence that they can be up there with
Their track record, number one. They've been through this before. I mean, we said on the show that airs tonight, I said it, that when I remember when like Chris Jones and some of those guys left here, Patrick Jones and Rashad Weaver left here, everybody was like, well, who was next? Well, it was Haba Baldonado. I remember when Aaron Donald left, who was next? Well, it ended up being a combination of guys, and then Kalaji Kancey's the defensive player of the year. That's just the defensive side of the ball. I remember when, what was Kenny Pickett's center, Jimmy Morrissey left here. Who was going to be the next center? Well, it was Jay Cradle. Well, who's after Jay Cradle? Well, I'd be willing to tell you that Ryan Jacoby did a great job playing both positions last year. You got guys who can, fill those gaps. I think that's a big part of who this program is. And their player development, we were talking about that, right, Coach? I mean, it's second to none.
Yeah, people, the guys here, you could tell, trust the staff. When you have history of success at a certain position group, and as a team, it attracts guys in the recruiting process, first of all. But then when they start to see the standard and see what it took for this guy, their teammate, like Kalaji a year ago, become a first-round draft pick, they saw the work that it takes, and they're like, if I want that, I got to do that too. So, we do talk about culture a lot, but it is important. And when you set a certain standard that the players understand and they're the ones pushing it instead of the coaches, that's when you have a special program, and that's what's happening here at Pitt.
Coach Richt, the college game is always changing,
right.
But it hasn't been that long since you were on the sideline. How has it changed since you left?
Like wildly, dramatically. Now college football is equivalent to having unrestricted free agency and no salary cap. It's true. I mean, you could transfer anywhere you want, whenever you want, right? Be eligible immediately. And then you get NIL money that there's no limit to what you can get. And you got kids coming out of high school making $2 million a year. I mean, I was talking to somebody about a booster at Georgia. No, it wasn't Georgia, but it was another program. But he got a phone call to say, hey, all we need is $250,000 to get this point guard for our women's basketball team. So I mean, the world has changed dramatically. It's hard nowadays to promote team because everybody's worried about their personal brand, and it's places like Pittsburgh, it's coaches like Narduzzi that can rally the troops and still play for the love of the game and the love of their school and their teammates, and it's harder and harder to do that.
Given those changes, do you miss it?
I don't. No, I miss this. Like I asked Coach Narduzzi, I said, don't you love this time of year? There's no school. There's nothing but football. And he says, yeah, you get about a week or two of this and it's back to the real world. But just purely coaching the game of football day in and day out, watching guys grow from boyhood to manhood in their lives is just so much fun. I miss that, but all the other headaches, I don't know if I could be dealing with those very good or not. Delegate, right?
You guys both had some high praise for this program. Do you feel like conference-wide maybe that this program's sort of undervalued or underappreciated? I mean, this was a team that was picked to finish tied for 6th in the ACC by the media who cover this league.
Yeah, I think we're all missing, I'll open the show tonight by this piece we shot yesterday by saying, here we are and it's August and nobody's talking about Pitt again. Because it's almost like an annual rite, 2-a-days and nobody talks about Pitt. But the value of what Pat has built here and really the history of the program since they've come into the ACC, Jerry and I've talked about it, it's on an ascent. It's been consistent. I mean, there are 3 programs here in the last decade that have built continuity, real strong continuity. NC State, Wake Forest, and Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's got the best record in the ACC, most wins in the last, 5 years for sure, last 8 years. You got more draft picks, all the things that you look for, in addition to sacks. But the reality is that their continuity and their brand and their culture, again, here we go back to culture and player development, it's real. And I think that's the reason that I believe in them. And I think the addition of Phil Dracovic with Frank Cignetti and the kind of caliber player they have around them, I think they've got some questions to answer. They've got a beneficial schedule that kind of stair steps a little bit. And if they get to Carolina, healthy in game 4, then we're getting ready to find out where that test is for them.
Well, I'll say this. I learned my lesson as a coach, taking it for granted in 2017, I think, when we had won 15 games in a row, went to Pitt.
Here we go.
They were 4-7, something like that. We were undefeated, like number 2 or 3 in the college football playoff. A little freshman quarterback, Kenny
number
Pickett,
8,
showed up and whooped our tails. So
whatever happened to him?
he's not. I think he's still hanging around.
Yeah, I think he's still hanging around. Hanging around here, actually.
That's exactly right.
Wes, you've been around more than just Pitt football.
Sure.
Over the years, and the last couple of years have been pretty successful in a lot of different things. Where do you think that's coming from?
Oh God. Well, I think Pat has a lot to do with it because I think his brand and I think his culture and idea and why he was such a great fit when he was hired. Because I think his playing personality as a coach fits this program. It fits the history of this program. I mean, we can, and I've joked with Kenny in the past. He caught them in the year they wanted to throw it. And same with Phil. But it's not who they are. It's blue collar football. And I think sometimes I say that as a compliment, Jerry. I don't say it as a slant. I think their playing personality wins games. And you talk to other coaches around the league, they know they're in for the fight when they play Pitt. And I think that's the brand that was here even when Paul was here the first year or 2 in the ACC. And then when Pat came in here, I think that brand has been fully developed, and that's why they're in the mix.
Does that transfer to other sports like basketball?
I think it has. Yeah, because I think Jeff has actually come in here and done a really good job. And again, the patience of the build. And that's why I mentioned NC State, Wake Forest, and Pitt. If you go back a decade, and Mark knows this because he went to Miami, what was it, 8 years ago now, 9 years ago?
In a minute.
Been a few, but that's what happened. I mean, the patience of the build can occur, and it's happened in Raleigh, it's happened in Winston-Salem. They've been there longer than Pat's been here, but you can also see the payoff here in a way that I think is almost exclusive to Pitt.
Coach and Wes, thank you so much.
All right, guys.